Hello and welcome to the Trash Talk Podcast. I am your host JJ and today I have Sergey.
Hello.
And today we're getting political. Except not really. Well, kind of.
I mean, kinda.
We're talking not about any specific political ideologies or affiliations, but rather voting. I guess there's a lot of associations here because it is very pro-democratic, to be for voting and all that.
Yeah. Also, generally, if we're discussing voting, I think that is also topic of political debate.
I mean, yeah,
so
and also I think some of the subpoints
kinda.
we have written down are definitely rather political because while I think most of us can agree that we should politically determine our government, we can't really agree on how. So let's talk about that. Wait, I'm sure let's talk about that with someone else's discussion already, but that doesn't matter. I don't know. The voting. Sergey, how do we fix the voting system? Which implies that it's broken, which, I mean...
I don't know. Don't think it's broken, but it could be better. I don't know how.
I mean, first of all, it depends on which voting system we're talking about, because there is... I was going to say as many as there are countries, but there's probably kind of more, but also kind of less, because not all countries are democratic, but also some non-countries have voting systems, and some countries have multiple voting systems because of having multiple constituent parts.
Also, not countries have voting systems. Other organizations.
Yes. And, completely unaffiliated with countries, you could have situations where voting comes up. You have, international organizations, infranational, states and counties and, cities and all that. Lots of voting. And don't even get me started on Switzerland. Which, honestly, might add, having your actual citizens vote on a lot of the important things rather than having politicians decide on it isn't the worst idea, but it does kind of require your citizens to also be somewhat informed on the topics that are being voted on.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Especially considering the first point we have written down.
Ah, yes. So let's
that
talk
we want to
about
discuss.
Mandatory voting. Should voting be mandatory?
I don't know. Only thing I would like to see if that ever becomes a thing would be an additional option of I don't know or I don't have a preference or something like that.
That's interesting. Right, so you force the people to vote, but if they don't care, they can check that. But that way that people that do care but are just too lazy to vote otherwise, for example, would still end up voting for whomever they prefer. It's an interesting approach.
Yeah.
So, mandatory voting is not quite as wild of a concept as some people might think it is. They do it in Australia.
Really?
Yes! I think
That's
it's the second time that I said something that people might think is wild, and that totally happens in Australia, so, we talked about legalizing prostitution before, which, of course...
Australia truly is upside down.
I mean... Yes! I believe Australia, as far as I'm aware, has mandatory voting. And most other countries do not. I think I'm not sure if they're the only one, but they're usually the one that gets brought up when it comes to mandatory voting. And I think mandatory voting is a good idea, because there's a question of how democratic is it really if, your voter turnout is 25%, and it's yeah, but someone ends up winning by 55% of the votes out of the 25% of people that showed up. So get an eighth of the population on your side,
Yeah.
and you end up winning. It's like, is that how democratic is that really? I don't know. Yeah.
It's kind of dubious. So yeah, generally, I like to see mandatory voting, but like only with that additional option of just
Yes.
not actually choosing a party or whatever.
The other hang-up I have about mandatory voting, and of course that could be solved by that, is the idea that a lot of people are not very politically informed. And to some degree, I am among those, of course. I try to, at least whenever elections come around, to look a little bit into it. But I'm not like the most politically informed person, and there's definitely ones that are less informed than me, even. And the point is, those people having a hand in deciding who gets to run the country when they don't even really know what they're voting for is kind of worrying. So
yeah,
we need, first of all, good political education in general, and then I think it would be good if there was like a good centralized, transparent way to like see what like the main points of every party are, right? Like, because every party presents a political program whenever elections come around,
definitely,
and you can look those up, but A, they tend up going pretty in depth oftentimes, and B, there's a lot of parties depending on what country you're in. I mean, most countries have a lot of parties. Just in some countries, they're more valid to vote for than in others. As in, the upcoming German government is made up of 3 parties that are running the thing, plus another, I don't know, 5, 6 or so that are in the opposition. Meanwhile, in the US, there is 2 parties in the Congress and Senate, and that's it. Right? Like, you ain't gonna get anyone else in there. And
pretty wild.
While I would consider a system where there's more than 2 parties more democratic, there is an argument to be had for both sides, I think.
Yeah. I do agree with you on that. Shit, I forget what I wanted to say.
That's not good. This whole show is about talking.
Yeah, no. And like, I'm not really good at that.
So,
gotta practice.
What I find a bit problematic about systems like the one in Germany, and I think it's similar in other places. I was gonna say Canada, but I think they actually have like something that's like halfway between the German and the US system. But the systems like in Germany, for example, where proportionally the seats are distributed proportionally according to the votes, there is some situations in which if you get like very few votes, you might not get a seat. And those are actually worth talking about. So to get a seat in the German parliament, you need to either get 5% of the popular vote, you need to get 3 direct mandates, or you need to represent a minority. And yeah, so there's actually a party that represents the Danish minority in Germany, and they got 1 seat, which doesn't normally happen. But they got 1 seat because they got just enough votes for a seat, and since they represent a, like, I don't know, what is it, like a cultural minority or whatever, they actually get to have that seat despite not meeting any of that criteria. The German Left Party ended up getting exactly 3 direct mandates and 4.9% of the popular vote, which, because of the direct mandates, they're still part of parliament, and that is how that works. And the fact of the matter is, if you vote for a party that doesn't clear any of those hurdles, well, mostly the first 2, the third one really is determined before the election, then your vote effectively doesn't count.
Yeah.
Which is a problem. And in the US, if you vote for a third party, you pretty much know it. I mean, you kind of know in Germany as well. Like, Left Party was pretty close, so that one's like, I don't know if my vote is going to count or not. So, like, I mean, I didn't end up voting for the Left Party for that exact reason, and that's a problem, right? I mean, I shouldn't have to vote for a party that is not my preference just because the party that I do prefer doesn't have a good chance of actually making it. Which, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but according to our notes, I mean, there's no intrinsic order to these topics.
Yeah.
I really like these ranked preference systems, where if your first vote effectively wouldn't matter, then your next vote comes in. So in something like the US presidential elections, or in mayoral elections and that sort of thing, where you have one candidate, like, that fills one position, also direct mandates in Germany, for example, there will only be the majority that matters at the end of the day. Every other vote is not going to matter. And the majority doesn't even have to be over 50%, because it just has to be the largest group. So,
Yep.
in that case, I think a rank preference system works really well, where it's like, oh yeah, this is my number one candidate, number two, number three, and, in theory, I think it should be possible to then rank all the candidates that are on the ballot in order, and, if there's some at the bottom you don't want to rank, then you don't have to, sort of thing, is how I would go with this. And then, we count everyone's first vote, and if that doesn't breach 50%, then we remove, like, the lowest person in the rankings, and everyone's who voted for that person as their number one goes on to their number two. If we then still end up not getting over 50%, we remove the lowest person. I believe it's called instant runoff, right? Where we remove the least popular candidate until we have a majority. That, for direct candidates, is perfect. And then, again, in the German federal elections, which we recently had, I would implement a similar system, right? I mean, we have direct mandates, and for those, obviously, it's that system. And then I would actually, for the party list votes, I would still actually enable you the option to pick a second and third candidate, so that, for example, if you vote for the left party, and you're like, they might not get 5%, then if they don't get 5%, or through direct mandates, or blah, blah, if they don't qualify to get any seats, then your vote shifts to your second favorite party, which, if you're voting left, might be the Greens, might be the SPD, might be the Leninist Marxist Party of Germany, I don't know. Point being, yeah, they're not going to make it either, but, you could.
Sure.
And so, then, that way every vote would matter. And I think that's particularly poignant in something like the US, where you vote for a president and a vice president. Technically, historically, those are two separate votes, but I think they're usually checked together these days. But you vote for, like, a person. Well, technically, you vote for someone who's going to vote for the person, but that's a whole other can of worms. And so, it would be really good if you could vote for your third-party candidate of choice, and then if they don't end up winning, if they end up being, like, third or worse, then they basically end up, you can put your second vote or your third vote, depending on how many third-party candidates you like, into, like, the Democrat or the Republican candidate. And if it turns out that because of that system, enough people vote for a third-party candidate to become president, or, seats in, like, senators and, Congress, men, women, persons, like, that whole system, like, if any of those times, like, your third-party candidate all of a sudden might actually make it, then that's cool. And if they don't make it, well, your vote still counts.
Yep. I really, really like this voting system. Like, in general. For pretty much everything. I definitely am in favor of that. Do you want to go on to the different subpoints?
Oh, you mean the different voting systems?
Like, yeah. Or, like, explain them.
Well, so I talked about direct preference, which is not really contrasting with the other systems necessarily. I mean, single vote is obviously the contrast to that, but there's also proportional representation, which is what we have in Germany. As a matter of fact, I believe since the last federal elections, we actually have a truly proportional system where the percentage of the popular vote determines the percentage of the seats that are given to the party. Whereas before, actually, the direct mandates didn't have to necessarily 100% agree with the... you could actually, before you could get overhang seats in Germany, where you would actually end up being able to get slightly more or less than you got in the popular vote, but then we actually equalize those by getting even more seats in there, which is why our which is why the Bundestag has grown so fucking huge. They have like over 700 seats, where before they would only have like around 400 maybe.
Wait, 700?
I think so, yeah.
Damn.
Bundestag.
Wasn't it like something like close to 400? Only a couple of years ago?
Yeah, exactly, right? So currently there's 736 seats.
Damn.
And can we... Oh, yeah, 20th. That's the current one. And then does it say that... Yeah, 736 seats, including 138 overhang seats and 379 leveling seats. No, wait. Oh, no. 138 overhang and leveling seats. Okay, that's what it is. And then 369 seats are needed for majority, is what it says here. 2017, we had 709 seats, and then 2013, we had 631, so it actually still is, but it only was 330, there's only 33 overhang seats, because I don't think they did leveling, though, despite the fact that it says leveling seats here as well. 2009 was 622, so it was always around 600, but it's become more. Because we don't just have overhang seats. Overhang seats, 20... So, starting with 2013 actually names leveling seats. In Wikipedia, I thought it was 2017 when we had it for the first time. But yeah, you know, that's really more of a detail that doesn't really matter to my point. But I just like bringing up because, yeah, we should probably reduce the base number of seats a little bit. And then we can still do the overhang and leveling thing to then go up to, like, maybe, you know, a couple hundred. But, like, 700 is a bit much.
Yeah.
Right. So proportional representation means if 10% of the population votes for a party, then they get 10% of the seats. And again, they're like the little extra hurdles and overhang seats is like some extra complications on there, but fundamentally that is what it's going to be. Then there is first past the post, where which is basically what the US uses, where you know, let me actually pull it up because that is a bit more complicated. First past the post. Let's use Wikipedia, everyone's favorite source of knowledge.
Yeah.
Single member plurality voting. Voters cast a vote for a candidate of their choice, and the candidate who receives the most votes wins, even if the top candidate gets less than 50%. So that's the main idea. Where you vote for one candidate, and they end up winning out. Which is how the US president works, right? Then it's oftentimes used in the way as it is in the US, where you vote for, well, actually, electoral voters, and you vote for your Congress people and for your senators. And those then end up making up the government, right? So that's like the direct mandates in Germany, but it's just that. So I think the Senate is a good example for that. Actually, the Congress, I think, is too, but I know a little bit better for the Senate, where every given state votes for 2 senators. And those 2 senators end up representing that state. You have a total of 100 senators. But the distribution of the Senate does, especially the Senate, because has in no way does it have to represent the population, like the popular vote. Because if, like, let's say for simplicity's sake, all states are the same size, and they all vote for 2 senators, so actually, in that case, it's more like Congress, where the congressional districts are roughly the same size. But if one party wins, let's say, out of the 100 Congress seats, they win 52 with a 51% majority, and the other party wins the other 49 seats, 48, I think, I said, with, like, an 80% majority. And if the districts are all the same size, then the party with the 80% majority there ends up getting way more than 50% of the vote, because they got 50% of the one half, basically, and they got, like, 80% of the other half. So they end up getting, like, 40 plus 25, like 65% of the vote, but only end up getting 48% of the seats, because of how that works. So, basically, the problem with the US is that you can win a bunch of districts very narrowly and still end up winning overall. Meanwhile, the landslides don't really matter. I mean, they still matter, but they don't matter. They matter just as much as if you inch out win.
I think I roughly understand, but I'm not entirely sure.
Let's keep the number simple. We want to elect someone. We divide the group of people that are going to vote into two groups. I don't know.
Yeah.
East and West. And then the people in the West vote for the blue party with 55% of the vote. And 45% goes to the red party. There's just two parties, keeping it simple. And in the East, 80% of the people vote for the red party and 20% vote for the blue party. Now,
yes,
everyone gets one seat. Well, it's a weird scenario where we have two seats to give out. Right? The blue party wins the West, red party wins the East. And sorry, I just thought about the fact that communism was associated with red and with the East. That was a coincidence.
Oh.
Anyways, so the communists win the East, and the blue party wins the West. Despite the fact that in this hypothetical country, the red party got 65% of the vote, slightly less actually, but 63% of the vote, about 2/3 of the vote. And the blue party got about 1/3 of the vote. Despite that, they're splitting it 50-50.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
I did actually understand it correctly, yeah.
Now,
that
make it 50
sounds like a problem.
subdivisions and also make them different sizes so that... I forget what the smallest US state is by population. I think it's like Idaho or something. But if you vote there for the president,
I don't know.
You get 2.5 times as many electoral college votes per person voting as you do in California. Which is not very democratic in my opinion. And let's not even get into the fact that...
All right, we did talk about that.
Yes, we have talked about that before.
That's the thing where a vote in one state can be twice as influential as one in another state.
Yep. The
2.5 times.
The largest disparity in the US between the value of a vote in one state versus another is 2.5 times. That is specifically for the presidential elections. When it gets to senatorial elections, it's way worse, because every state gets 2 senators, independent of their population size. Which is similar. There's similar situations in other countries. I think, actually in Germany, the Bundesrat might be created similarly as well, where every state gets their minister-president, and I don't know exactly how they make it up, but I think that is also based on state elections.
I don't know.
Doesn't matter. But yeah, senators, right? Whoa. The fact that California gets the same amount of... is California the most populous? I think they are. Yeah, that's I think why the other one worked. But, let's see. U.S. states by population. So, California has, as of April 1st, 2020, that was the last census, has damn near 40 million people. 39,538,000. Let's round it to the nearest million, 40 million. And Wyoming, Vermont, Alaska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Delaware, Idaho's not even that low. Idaho's 40th, not 50th. Anyways, Wyoming has around 500,000 people. 576,851. So, in terms of senators, effectively, Wyoming gets effectively damn near 80 times the amount of senators per person as California does. 80. I mean, I get it, right?
That's a lot.
The reason why the Senate exists is because individual states have their own interests, and every state needs to be somewhat represented, even something as small as Wyoming. There is technically... The fact that Vermont is smaller than Wyoming is kind of weird. Larger. Dude, Alaska is always the one that gets me, right? Alaska is the third least populated state, but also the single largest by size. But it's Alaska, right? I mean, you're Siberian, you know that. So, same idea, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Very cold, not very densely populated. But yeah, no, Wyoming, and, let's not even get into the fact that, if you live in, say, Puerto Rico, which is, by the way, larger than the 31st largest state, so, there's that. They don't get to vote at all for the federal government. There's that.
Damn.
Does it say here electoral college votes? Percentage of electoral college. Yep, zip. And people in DC actually do get to vote. They don't get a senator. Well, they do get one senator, but that senator is not allowed to vote, and they can only sponsor a bill if someone else co-sponsors it, meaning they effectively don't have a senator. But at least they do get to vote in federal elections. Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands, North Mariana Islands, and American Samoa also don't get to vote. But their populations are also all smaller than Wyoming, which is not a justification for why they don't get to vote, but their combined population is actually smaller than that of Wyoming. So, in theory, they wouldn't have a huge impact on the election. But Puerto Rico is about 6 times the size of Wyoming. By population. So...
Yeah. How about we at least move back into the direction
right, yeah, sorry.
Of the topic.
My point is, the US is just masquerading as a democracy, and they barely are, if at all, one.
Yeah.
What was that whole thing about no taxation without representation? I think they threw some tea into a sea or something, into the ocean. It's almost like a country that was built on those principles shouldn't have part of the population that can't vote. Just that's an idea. Speaking of part of the population that can't vote, how about felons?
I do think everyone residing in that country should be able to vote.
I'm not 100% certain if I agree with that. I definitely think every citizen should be able to vote. Resident?
Yeah.
Maybe? I think resident, you would have to have some qualifications where it's like, oh yeah, has resided in the country for at least, 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Permanent resident, spends at least 50% of the time in the country, blah, blah, blah. But maybe, but definitely citizens, right?
Wouldn't even... I don't know.
Definitely people that are both residents and citizens, okay? Let's...
Yes, yeah, that definitely.
This is not necessarily as much about the edge cases. I mean, yes, those are important as well, and those should be considered, but, yeah, just because you committed a crime doesn't mean you're not a citizen anymore, and thereby you should still be able to vote. I actually don't know how it works in Germany. I should have probably looked that up before. But I know in the US, whether or not you're allowed to vote as a felon depends on the state. Because of course it does. In some US states, felons are not allowed to vote. In some states, they are allowed to vote once they are out of jail. In some states, I think in most states where you are allowed to vote once you're out of jail, you still have to apply to get your voter registration reinstated. Which, by the way, voter registration is a stupid concept.
What is that?
Oh, in the US, you need to register to be allowed to vote. You need to do that a bit before the election, and it's mostly just paperwork. I think it might even cost a little bit of money as a processing fee. Have I mentioned that they're not a real democracy? So see, in Germany, whenever elections come around, they send you a letter. And they're like, hey, by the way, there's elections coming up. You might want to vote. If, here is where your local voting station is. If you don't want to go there to vote, here is a letter you can send us to either get to be able to vote somewhere else, or to get a mail-in ballot. I always check that latter option because, Jesus Christ, I'm not going to go out to vote. Like, why would I? Standing in line just to vote? I mean, okay, no, I totally would stand in line just to vote if that was necessary, but it's not. So why would I? Oh yeah, mail-in voting, by the way, I think is also something that needs to be a system in place if mandatory voting is a thing. Because we can't ask people to stand in line for possibly hours, depending on how understaffed the polling stations are, just to vote and be fine if they don't, right? Like, that is... Also, by the way, if you require in-person voting, then election day needs to be a holiday, or it needs to be held on a weekend, or on an existing holiday. That's also another thing in the US, right? Technically, I think you're supposed to get off of work for the time that it takes for you to go voting, but it's, and it's not officially a holiday. So technically, you are still working that day. You can just be like, hey, let me step out for an hour to go check a box on the ballot box. That's also not exactly great. And we haven't even talked about, this wasn't supposed to be a video just ragging on the US, which is why the things like gerrymandering are not even on the list. Or other voter restriction.
By the way, voter restriction, I just looked up how it is in Germany, and it appears that felons can vote, but with some restrictions.
To be fair, the concept of a felony as distinguished from a misdemeanor does not really exist in Germany. So that's worth noting. Whereas, so in the US, there's a distinction between a misdemeanor and a felony, which is just how bad the crime is, basically. Though jaywalking can be a felony under certain circumstances, because of course it can, because let's get more people in prisons, because corporations run those and they need to make profit. Which is a whole nother issue that is not the topic.
Yeah,
so I also think felons should be able to vote even while in prison.
Yes.
So that's one of those things that also varies depending on where you are. I think there's just no justification to take someone's voting rights away. Yes, go ahead.
So the rare restrictions on voting in Germany for felons is only if it's ordered by the court.
Oh. Okay.
So, yeah.
I assume that very rarely happens.
It is very rare, too. Yeah.
It's also kind of wild, because even that I don't think is necessary. Because the fact of the matter is, if, say, you have 100 people in a year, which already sounds like a lot, that you forbid to vote, that would pile up over time. But you're still getting maybe a couple thousand people. Those are not going to swing an election. Also, that is assuming that they all vote for the same party, right?
Yes. Yeah, I don't think that should be a thing at all.
Yeah.
Just doesn't make sense to me, just pure effort to result.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
No, I mean, so that's voting for felons. We actually have two more subpoints, and I think one that was very near and dear to your heart was political advertisement.
Yeah. Briefly touched upon that point with you mentioning a central point where you can just look up every party's what was the word? Agenda?
Yeah, agenda, party program.
Sure, that somewhat exists here in Germany, but it's, as you said, usually really long and detailed.
And also, I'm not sure if there is one centralized place that is official where you can look those all up. I know that you can look those up on the respective parties' websites, but again, that's too much work because there's a lot of parties. And while I would be willing to, in the parties that I already am considering to vote for, maybe look at their individual programs, I am not saying that everyone is and should have to do that, is doing and should have to do that. And also, there are some places that are specifically made to aggregate those sort of things. I think there's the political compass test. No, not the political compass. That's the other one. There's something like that. There's a election.
Valomat.
Yeah, exactly. Which is specifically like you can like answer some questions that they're like, oh yeah, this is the parties you align with most, and then I think they also have some key points of their respective party programs. But I'm pretty sure that's just an independently created thing, isn't it? That's not an official.
I don't actually know.
And
it looks kind of official, but I'm not sure.
I somehow doubt. Let's see, de.wikipedia.
Yeah.
Or they probably have an article. Wikipedia. There's de.org. Yeah, I have to type it out if I want to go to German Wikipedia.
Yeah, I know.
Jesus Christ. If only I could type.
Yeah. Like, from my first experience, it doesn't work really well. Because the couple times I tried it, it suggested me parties I like actively don't want to vote for. Like, if I was to vote in German elections. So yeah. But apparently other people have good experiences with it.
Yeah, I think it also is just leaning somewhat heavily towards the mainstream parties by default. So it's mostly like, oh yeah, are we going to vote SPD or CDU? Find out today. Well, but like, if you wanted to vote like something a bit more out there, then it's already a bit more difficult. I mean, I'm sure they have all the parties that end up making
party it suggested for me to vote the most on, or like the party I apparently matched the most with was AFD.
No. Sergey, what did you tell them?
Yeah.
Do you have hidden anti-immigrant sentiments that I'm unaware of?
I don't know how that happened.
So apparently,
it somehow did.
That is apparently run by a organization that was in fact funded by founded by our government. So yeah, it does seem to be somewhat official.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I like that particular format where the questionnaire and then it just picks a party for you, because that seems a bit iffy. Especially because of some parties that have similar focuses already. I think having a centralized place where all the programs are listed, especially for all the parties that have previously made a certain hurdle, will make sense. I mean, there's always I think you should probably have all of the parties that are on the ballot in there, but maybe, sort them by previous election results or something, so, because no one's going to read every party's description.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would like it if like the key points of each party were sorted and arranged in a table-like manner. We could just compare each party's stance on a particular issue.
Yeah.
That would be really, really beneficial, I think.
Yeah.
But you'd also most definitely would have to have like just a free text somewhere for each party too, because like not every party has a stance on each and every issue.
Yeah. And I think you could also have like the list with the main points, and then have like a filter option where it's like all of the main talking points are like being talked about as election topics at that time, where you can like check off like, oh yeah, like I want to vote for a party that is pro-environment, right? Like something like that, where it's like, oh yeah, like a party that is for reducing carbon emissions, which is, I think, most of them right now, but like not all.
Yeah.
Stuff
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so political advertisement though. You think I believe your point was that they shouldn't run their own advertisement or something?
I think it should be like the playing field should be much more leveled.
Yes.
Than it currently is. And also probably, though I'm not really sure on how it is currently, should be more regulated on what is allowed to be on there and what maybe is even required to be on the advertisement.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some regulations on what you can and can't put in political advertisement.
Yeah.
I do agree that there needs to be somewhat even playing field. I think it would be good if they had like some system in place where, like, maybe, especially for like TV advertising, which I think is the one that I feel like I see two types of political advertisement usually. It's TV spots and it's actual billboards that they hang up places. Well, billboards not necessarily, but like smaller like advertisement
posters,
yeah, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the latter is harder to regulate in the first place because like if unless you completely outlaw them, it's gonna be tricky to like really check how much people are putting up where and sort of thing. But
yeah,
I do think that I don't hate the posters. You know, they're very public. They remind people that it's election season. You know, that sort of thing. I think they have some purposes, but it is tricky because only the big parties have them usually. I think for TV spots, you should probably have a system in place where I think channels are already required to run them, maybe, if they're approached. I don't know how exactly it works, but because most channels do run them. And I would maybe have a system in place where, like, there's, you know, a certain volume of ad space that is reserved during election season for political ads, and every party that reached a certain hurdle in the previous election gets to run one spot in that rotation of a certain length, basically. And then, again, with guidelines, but that I think would be good. I don't know what the exact cutoffs are, but I think there are cutoffs in Germany as well about like how much you have to reach for your party to get funding from the government for the next election.
I don't know about that, but yeah, that. I
believe in the US it's 5%
like
of popular vote.
Thing.
In Germany, I think it was a bit lower. I think it's 1% or 3% or something. And so basically, everyone who qualifies to get aid in the next election should then also be allowed to run a spot. And again, I would just make there like an official place basically where you can like enter your advertisements about, like, basically I would have the government take care of all of the TV deals and then have the parties just basically submit their ads, and then if they meet the guidelines, then have them run in an equal rotation across all of those. Now, of course, when I say have the government take care of it, I do think there should be a certain requirement of, like, you know, a certain fixed amount of airtime for those, because you don't want the government to end up having, at the end of the day, the government has the power, but you don't want, like, one party being in charge at the moment, being like, well, actually, we'll dial down the political advertisement this year because they already are the popular favorite, and so they don't want their competition to have extra chance for advertisement, so they reduce the overall advertisement. There has to be some official like benchmark in place where it's like you have to like have at least this much advertisement, and then if they want to change it, then that should be something that the public is very aware of, and that should hopefully, I mean, and that's the thing, right? Like, if one party would then try to change the guidelines, which inevitably they would have the power to do if they're in charge, but then the opposition would likely end up making noise about it, and that would then become a public thing, and that is probably a PR nightmare to do, unless you have a really good justification for it, so that would inherently, I think, make it so that would kind of stay in place.
Yeah. Very point.
We've been on this for a while, but I do want to definitely touch on our last point that we wrote down. What do you think the legal voting age should be?
Same. I think it should stay at 18, but like allow for like some sort of compromise for people that are younger. Not too young, but like only a couple of years younger.
So I think the two that are mainly debated is 18, which is, I think, in most places what it currently is, including Germany, and 16, which some people say you should lower the voting age to 16. I don't hate that idea. Oftentimes, teenagers are already very involved in the politics. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of political activism is being made more so by younger people. I actually don't hate the system in Germany right now, where for state elections, at least in North Rhine-Westphalia, I don't know if those probably do differ from state to state, you can vote from the age of 16, and in federal elections from the age of 18. So
that sounds like a good compromise.
Where it's like, you know, it's kind of weird that you can vote in some elections but not in others, but also, like, the more important the election are, then maybe the more mature you want the people to be that are voting. And of course, 2 years, big difference, but, like, something like that where, especially on lower level elections, it's not as much harm can be done, though also not as much good can be done, so that you can look at it both ways. If we do mandatory voting, I think mandatory voting should only start at maybe 18 or something, where it's like, maybe if you're 16 you can vote, but you don't have to, because forcing 16-year-olds to make political decisions might not be the greatest idea. There are some that are going to be politically involved, and those will want to vote, but then others don't have to. And I think, if with the voting age I was thinking maybe, like, have, like, a secondary requirement, but it's like, oh yeah, you have to, like, prove that you have at least some sort of political knowledge to be able to vote at a younger age, but it's like, it's iffy because A, it's a lot of overhead and cost, and B, it's like, those tests can be skewed to only allow for certain political ideologies to have a better chance at passing the tests and blah blah blah. I think 18 is fine as a voting age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've thought about, like, kind of scaling the amount of, like, power you have with your vote, but that seems kind of sketchy.
Dubious, yeah. I mean, I guess you could do something in German federal elections specifically. You could do something where it's like, oh yeah, if you're, like, between 16 and 18, like under 18 but above 16, well, 16 or older, like 16, if you're 16 or 17 basically, you get to vote for the direct mandates but not for the proportional, for the party list votes, meaning that you don't actually skew the overall composition of the Bundestag, because that is completely determined by the party list votes, but you can possibly get a candidate in there that wouldn't otherwise make it. It's kind of interesting because that can effectively influence which people are in there, but doesn't influence the overall composition. I don't know if it is the less meaningful vote, so it's kind of weird if you do allow it. But I also, like, tiering it at levels, I think, is actually one of the smarter systems. I don't know how other countries handle it. I know most. I think, I don't actually know how it is in the US for, like, local elections, because those probably, once again, vary from local jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But I think, like, being able to, like, vote on something like gubernatorial elections in the US, for example, at age 16 and then federal elections at 18 would also be a reasonable system.
Yeah. That sounds reasonable.
Do we want to move on to the after show? Oh, no, wait. Facts of the week?
Fact of the week. I
love it how I literally have it in my notes, and it's still almost. I was looking at the notes that have our topics and our halftime show and all that stuff. It literally says fact of the week and song of the week on there, basically so we don't forget to make them. And still, because it always says it there, you still skim over it. Sorry. Go ahead. What's your fact of the week?
Don't have that much research on this, so it might turn out to be not entirely correct. But apparently, lighters were invented before matches.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, lighter is arguably a simpler concept. Like, the matchstick might seem simpler, but, like, the phosphorus that then, like, because of friction is ignited, and, like, having the phosphorus actually coat the tip of the match without going everywhere, because, like, if it ended up running down a bit when you're doing the coating and there's, like, some down, then you could burn yourself more easily. If it's too little coating, it's not going to burn properly. And, like, matches are actually surprisingly complicated if you think about how they work. And a lighter is just, like, a spark and a burnable fluid. It seems simpler if you think about it. Maybe I'm just making one simpler, the other more difficult by explaining in different levels of detail, but it wouldn't surprise me. Wasn't the can opener older than the can? No, that's the other way around.
Maybe?
I think the can opener came out a couple years after the can, I think that's what it was. Where it's like, there was, like, a time period where, like, tin cans existed but no can openers, but, like, it's not that surprising since you can open them with, like, a knife or something. I think that's what it was, but...
Yeah.
Lighters older than, I mean, maybe not exactly in the model that we know them today, but I can see that.
The modern lighter is younger than matches, but, like, lighters in general are slightly older than matches.
See? That's exactly what I thought this was going to end up being. Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
Again, if you think about it, you can kind of reason why that would be. But intuitively, if you were asked and you weren't thinking about it, you would just, like, gut instinct, and you would have obviously gone with matches.
Yep. They seem lower tech somehow. I don't know. Less moving
Because they're
parts.
sticks.
And wood, yes.
He's like, oh yeah, like, what is newer, this metal or sometimes even plastic device? Of course, plastic is probably newer, but
yeah.
or this wooden stick, like, yeah, no, of course. I mean,
yep.
it makes sense. My fact of the week is a bit more specific. I don't do these too often because some people might watch this in the future, which is very presumptuous of me because maybe no one is even watching in the present. But my fact of the week is about right now, or more accurately, it's about tomorrow. This is a public service announcement. Tomorrow is the season premiere of season 13 of Doctor Who. Okay? Y'all don't forget that. That's literally my... I mean, I know I've told you before that it is tomorrow as of this releasing. Sunday.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know everyone who watches this podcast definitely is a huge Doctor Who fan, because why wouldn't they be? But yeah,
Bro.
I feel like this is important knowledge to share.
It is.
I cannot
really is.
Fucking wait.
Also, thanks for reminding me, because I totally forgot.
I knew you. In theory, you knew, but I also was like, Sergey is the kind of person who would forget that. So yes, that is Sunday.
I am a very forgetful person.
Which brings us to the halftime show, which is Higher Lower. You know it. You love it. We're playing Higher Lower, classic. Monthly started in 2017, as we discovered. So yeah, and we're playing classic, and Sergey's going first.
Yep.
Honda or Mike Tyson?
I've heard the name.
It's
which
car
probably means he's quite.
Sorry, Patrick.
Yes. But 5 million.
I don't know.
Gonna go lower.
I would maybe think so as well, because celebrities aren't oftentimes that high, and like, you know, he was a boxer. He bit off a guy's ear once. That's mostly what he's known for. He also likes his pigeons. Mike Tyson or The Secret Garden?
If only I could remember how many monthly searches The Secret Garden has,
because it
comes up like every second time. Yeah. I think it was lower.
I mean, I would assume so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. Yosemite. Is it Yosemite? That's what it's called. I was like, this doesn't seem right. Yosemite National Park.
Okay, that is really counterintuitive how you pronounce that.
I know,
to
right?
me at least.
Throws me off every single time I see it. As you notice.
Yes. 90,500 is not a lot. I've never heard of this national park. I don't know. Gonna risk it and pick higher?
I would think so. I think it might be the second to most well-known in the US. After Yellowstone. I think it might be. I'm not 100% sure.
Fitbit. Is that a brand of like those like bands or whatever you call them that you strap on yourself to prevent sweat?
No.
What is that?
It's kind of like a smartwatch, but it's specifically for like sports purposes. It like measures your pulse and stuff like that.
Okay, gonna go higher.
I would think so. I think it's
more people are interested in sports than
I think
a
it's
national
also
park.
the most popular brand of those. Speaking of sports, Fitbit or the Green Bay Packers.
Never heard of them. Gonna go lower.
They're a sports
4
team in
million
the National
is
Football
quite
League.
a bar to beat.
And they were lower.
Oh damn!
Green Bay Packers are black hole.
Black hole. Shit. For this one, I gotta put my biases aside.
Yep.
Because instinctively I want to say higher, but like that's obviously me being biased, so I'm gonna go lower.
Also, might I add that the Green Bay Packers just defeated the previously undefeated Arizona Cardinals. Well, undefeated this season. Arizona Cardinals. Like, literally Thursday.
Oh, damn.
They were the Cardinals were the last undefeated team this season, so, you know, that happened. Black hole or lesbian?
I think lesbian has more monthly searches.
Okay. I find both of those are really weird standalone. Maybe it's just the singular that throws me off, but lesbian or George Orwell?
Again, putting biases aside, I'm gonna say lower.
Yeah. George Orwell or Masai Mara? I think I'm saying that right? Maybe? I don't know.
Yay. What language is that?
If I had to guess, I would, based off of the image, say it's probably one of the African ones, which I know very little about.
True. I am currently thinking whether or not it could be something in Indian. Like in one of the languages spoken in India.
I was about to say there's no one Indian language, yes.
Yes. Because that would... India could skew the monthly searches by quite a bit.
Right. That's a good point, the India factor. T-series and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine having the largest
I'm gonna go lower.
Imagine having the largest YouTube channel that, like, before they became the largest, basically no one had ever heard of in, like, the Western world.
Yep.
You said lower. And that is, of course, correct, because I've never heard of that. Masai Mara or Moscow Mule?
Okay, higher. That's gotta be higher than 50,000.
Yep. I mean, people want to look up how to make one of those. Moscow Mule or Guantanamo Bay?
I think that has... Was it 2017?
What 2017?
Ooh. What?
Was what 2017?
Like when the whole media was about all that.
I want to say it might have been earlier, but I'm not 100% sure. Oh, I saw an interesting...
a couple of years earlier would still be fine.
Oh, right. I mean, I'm not 100% certain. I saw like...
Gonna go higher.
I think it was a tweet. I would probably go lower, but let's see. Yeah. Yeah, your score's 10, by the way, which is really good. I'm gonna go now, and then we're gonna move on to the second topic, because this is actually talking about because you got to 10, and we talked about it as well.
Yeah.
What was it? Yeah, right. Waterboarding at Guantanamo Bay sounds really fun if you don't know what either of those two things are.
Yes.
The Baltimore Orioles or Six Nations?
Starting off with a tough one.
Okay, so this picture screams baseball. I'm gonna say they're a baseball team. Six Nations. I don't know, but this image looks... I mean, the ball looks like a football a little bit, so was it like rugby or like Aussie rules football or something? I'm going to go lower. That was correct.
Yeah.
WordPress. So I can probably read what it says in the background there, but
Not really, but like some characters, yeah.
He's like, I can read 2014, I can read Hello World and Mr. WordPress. Anyways, where was I, right? WordPress, relatively popular for blogging or website making or something in that realm. I'm gonna say people actually looking for that because they want to use it. So it's a very internet thing to look up, so I'm gonna say higher, but I'm honestly not confident. Way higher. Should be more confident. Please, lower.
It is advertised quite a lot.
Yeah. Okay, Indiana Jones, probably higher. It's a very popular character, though not that much. Kayak, lower? Nope. No, not even close.
Ooh.
Kayak, really?
Yeah. I would have guessed higher, but I wouldn't have expected that difference.
Well, all that is to say, Sergey beat me once again.
Gotten really good at it.
I know, right? Like, I used to be way better at it than you, and then, like, you really picked it up, and I've maybe even gotten slightly worse since, but not a lot, but then you've gotten, like, really good at it.
Yeah.
Closed on the questions.
Don't know how.
We're not going to go too hard on these, because, again, we've been going for a while, but, I'm going to answer a couple. Starting with...
Okay, 25.
Do you consider yourself to be a goal-oriented person?
Like, what does that even mean?
Are you oriented towards goals as a person? I mean, I don't know, man. Like, do you have goals? Like, do you strive to complete said goals? Like, or do you just kind of lay around all day and watch YouTube? Because let me tell you, I
mean, I do have goals. I want to complete them, whatever. But I'm also like a master procrastinator. So, probably not.
Okay, I have a couple goals, but I don't even really have any good long-term life goals, which is kind of sad. So I'm gonna say no. What grocery store do you shop at most often?
Probably Lidl.
Okay. I was gonna go with Aldi, but yeah, there we go. At least one of those does exist in the US, so there's that. Because I know that's where most of our viewers are from. Do you think other intelligent life exists in the universe?
Most likely, yeah. Just by the sheer size of it.
That thing is huge. Do you listen to podcasts?
Which could very well just be infinite, which is much, much larger than you might think.
There is a reasonable assumption to be made that there is intelligent life in the observable universe, which is finite.
Yeah.
And then we just don't know what's beyond that, which is the fun part.
Yep. What's also fun is that the universe could be not infinite, could just loop around.
Yeah, that's also wild.
That also seems like really fun.
Honestly, kind of the least intuitive one for me, though, is if it's finite and it doesn't loop. Like, to some people that might seem like the most intuitive one, but, like, that would mean there's an edge to the universe.
Yeah.
That you can't go past, and there's nothing past it. There's, like, literally nothing past it. Like, I can't conceptualize
that just doesn't make sense to me.
Like, empty space, sure, right? But nothingness, like, you can't go there. It's not like empty space. I mean, besides the fact that the universe is expanding, I think faster than the speed of light, maybe. But like, nothing.
It breaks my head.
There's no
honestly.
Space. It's not that there's no atoms. It's not empty space. Not even truly, like, even empty space in our universe is usually like, quantum fluctuations and particles getting created and destroyed and blah blah.
Yeah.
And that is assuming there was an absolute vacuum.
The quantum fields are still there.
Mm-hmm. And like nothing? Like absolutely nothing? Not in space? No time? There'll be no time there! Because of space!
It's crazy.
Does not compute!
Not at all.
Also, this is technically a closed-ended question because there's a no question, but like, this is a conversation starter. Which, oh, by the way, conversationstarterspool.com. Which, okay, fair enough. But like, these aren't supposed to be conversation starters necessarily. They're supposed to be quick questions. You know what? Let's do up to a nice round number, and then we'll call it after that. Do you listen to podcasts?
Rarely.
Yes, certainly I do. Probably then more often than you, but also not like that regularly. I'm not sure if there's any podcasts that I actively follow right now, as I'm thinking about it. Can't come up with anything, no. I mean, there's a couple of podcasts I listen to every now and again, but nothing that I'm like every single new episode when it comes out. There's some that that I have listened to for a while, and I'm not right now, but like I will catch up eventually again. That we're not really missing any episodes. I'm just behind. But I don't think there's any that like actually follow like every time like there's a new episode out. No, nothing like that. Who is your favorite superhero?
That is a very tough question for me. Not really in the loop with all the superheroes.
You know, I was gonna say this is also a very tough question for me for the exact opposite reason.
Yeah.
Option paralysis people. There's so many, and I like most of them.
Way too many.
I mean, the obvious answer would be to go with something like Invincible was like one of the best superhero comics I've read, and it has the bonus points of not being like too mainstream of a character. Well, before the show came out especially, but so like I guess Invincible would be a good pick, but
the show was really good.
Oh, you watch it?
Yeah. Really liked it.
Was it on my recommendation, or did you just randomly stumble upon that?
I don't think it was one of your recommendations. I just randomly found people on YouTube talking about it and recommending it.
Yeah.
And I watched it, and it was really good. I'd recommend.
I might even say that the show was better in some places, at least, than the corresponding comics. But there's so much more to the comics just because of how much longer that went on. And
I mean, that was the exact point of the video that I watched, saying the show, at least up until now, is better than the comic.
Yeah, I think the show is improving on aspects from the comics. But again, like the comics just went so much further because they had so much more time. And I mean, I think the show was supposed to get a second season. So, I mean, I
think so. Yeah.
I mean, not that you can finish up everything that happened in the comics in another second season, but that means it might get a third one and so on and so forth. Otherwise, I mean, I'm always tempted to say something like Mimic or Multiple Man. Well, Mimic, actually, the 616 version isn't really a hero. I'm thinking of the Earth 12 version of Mimic. Actually, that's an answer I always liked, like Earth 12 Mimic, which is like such a specific answer. But, you know, I really liked Exiles as well, the comic that he was in. Multiple Man is also one that I always tend to like a lot. But again, like, limiting it down to one specifically, and yes, as you can notice, I'm more of a Marvel guy than DC, but, you know. About how many books do you read on average in a year? This question makes me sad, because way fewer than I would want to, despite the fact that I want to. Which, like, how? But I can tell you. From like, I don't know, 2015 to 2019 or something, like 0. Which is very sad. Before then, like, I don't know, like, somewhere between 20 and 50, which is like a very vague amount. But like, I would probably finish a book, like, once every other week or so, maybe? I don't know. Maybe a bit more often, but maybe a bit
Quite
more.
A lot of books.
And, like, right now, like, I think last year, I've read that one. I've read that one. I've read like half of that one. Like 3 or 4, I think, last year.
I think for the past couple years, like 2 or 3 years, it's been about like 6 to 7 books a year.
And I would optimally want it to be at least 12, but again, I'm not currently... I haven't read in like...
Yeah.
I've barely read at all this year, which is why... Oh god, the year's almost over. I've read like half a book maybe this year so far, so, pace is not very good. I've read the new Hunger Games book last year. I've read one of the Shadowhunters books. I've read Armageddon, and I think that might have been it, actually, so maybe 3 last year, actually. So yeah, I definitely want to increase that, but also, it's one of those things where if I don't set time aside for it, I'm not going to do it. And that's kind of sad, because I definitely like doing it, and I definitely have to get back to that. I used to, for a while, last year, I would read, like, first thing in the morning when I would get up, like, before I would turn on my computer, and then I would also try to read before I go to bed. And I would usually read, like, 1 or 2 chapters every time. And, book having, like, 30 chapters or so, like, you'd get through one of those pretty quickly. And then that stopped, so I'm literally looking at the book that I'm partway through right now, and I literally see where the bookmark is, and that is not quite halfway in. So, there's that.
Yeah.
How many cans of soda do you drink in an average week?
Approaching 0.
Yes, I think...
I don't know.
I think over my entire lifetime, it's probably less than 0.01 if we're going with the literal definition of cans of soda, because I don't really drink anything out of cans usually. Right now, 0. Even if we get past the whole can part of it, I don't really drink any sodas. I will drink
same,
like, a glass of Coke or something when I'm like in a restaurant or like at an event, right? But like, actually, yeah, I think the last time I really drank like a larger... the last time I drank a soda, I think, was when I went to a wedding. The time before that might have been a birthday party, where I drank probably like 2 bottles worth of Coke, like 2 liters roundabout. It's like, that's the thing, right? Like, I used to drink about 2 to 3 liters of Coke every day, which is not good. Don't do that. It's a lot of sugar. But...
Ow.
Well, I'm thirsty, man. Now I'm a hydro homie and all that stuff. Well, I also drink a lot of coffee. That cup is way too empty to actually show that. But yeah, I switched to coffee. So as to avoid the exact problem, because no sugar. I don't get people who... Well, no, I've never put milk in my coffee, and I didn't really do sugar for very long either. I very quickly stopped doing that. I just drink my coffee black. I like it that way, but that's not the question. And because I said let's run out on a round number.
Okay.
Number 32. Do you prefer big parties or small gatherings?
Small gatherings, for sure.
Yeah, obviously. That's a stupid question to ask us if you know anything about us, because obviously, right? That's the answer. Yeah. Actually,
why even invite many people if you're only going to interact with one group?
That's actually a point. I actually really like small gatherings, actually. This is the thing, right? Yeah. I don't like big parties at all, really, usually. But, I do quite appreciate small gatherings. You hang out with, 5 people or something. Yep. It's almost great stuff, playing some D&D. Maybe not. But, D&D is fun, barbecues are fun, right? When we're having, our small barbecues, that sort of thing. It's always good times. If you have too many people to play one game of poker, then that's not a good party. Though,
True.
Alex and I have managed to set up poker games at larger parties as well. we've literally been to a birthday party and started up a poker game with some of the guests. Like, listen, right?
I know.
Real life is not a poker game.
It's...
That was fun. There's a reason why I always have a poker set in my trunk. No, I wasn't driving that time. Because it was a birthday party and there was going to be alcoholic drinks. And, you know, I'm a responsible person. I don't drink and drive. But I do both drink and drive separately. So I didn't want to drive then because I was going to drink. That's how that works. And so Alex had to drive because he doesn't drink. So that wasn't a problem.
It's an XOR.
Yes.
Um.
No, well, no, because neither is totally an option as well. Like, I'm currently neither drinking nor driving.
True. It's a NAND.
I was about to say, it's NAND, right? Yeah. That's what it is. It's NAND, you don't do both at once. One or the other, or neither. There we go.
Yep.
That is your Boolean logic lesson of the day. Which brings us to everyone's favorite subject, I think, unless we want to say something else about parties.
Not really. Except that I'm like always disappointed when Alex does not bring a poker set with him when we go to like some party or gathering or whatever.
Right, because Alex doesn't have one on him by default. That's what I'm saying, right? If I'm there by car, I'll have a poker set in the trunk. I'll be ready, man. I have like a poker set and a stack of paper plates. The latter one is mostly because of Alex, but you know, I have it.
Yep.
Like, Alex is the kind of person, right? We'll have a barbecue, and first of all, we'll always eat all of paper plates when we're at Alex's place for some reason. I didn't expect this was going to be co-op, but okay. And then the best part is, sometimes we'll not have any, right? And then Alex will, like, text me, like, oh yeah, bring some paper plates. Half the time, while I'm already on the way. So I ain't getting this text, because, you know, I don't take my phone places. And, like, so, like, he'll be like, oh, did you bring the plates? I'm like, what plates? He's like, oh, I sent you a Discord message. I'm like, yeah, I was already gone at the time, probably. And so now I just always have a pack of paper plates in my trunk, just in case.
Yep. Same thing with Martin. He now pretty much always has like some plastic eating utensils in his car.
Oh, those I don't have. I just have the plates. Because those are usually the thing that runs out for some reason. But yeah. Good stuff. Yes. That brings us to everyone's favorite segment. We're doing Song of the Week. Sergey.
My song of the week. My song of the week is If There Was an Endpoint by 2U.
I feel like I've heard better songs of that style before.
Boy. One thing I want to mention about it, like not directly the song, but the accompanying video on YouTube, is that while preparing this song, or like this video file thingy, I watched the song on YouTube and I had subtitles on. And I had to turn them off to confirm that they were not part of the video. They were really well implemented. I do recommend checking them out.
So, on YouTube, you can actually...
Looks really cool.
Bonus fact, you can actually do a lot of things with subtitles, but I think if you use the subtitle editor in YouTube, your options are actually somewhat limited. But you can upload a subtitle file in a specific format that does allow for all sorts of things, including placing the subtitles in other places, and also making them different colors and all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
So yeah,
all that part of the subtitles in there.
that is
It's really good.
good to mention. I guess we'll leave a link to that in the description below.
Yeah.
And my song of the week is something that people might have actually heard of. Okay, no, that was rude. Something that is maybe more internationally known. I don't know how. This probably didn't make it to the West. Is Riptide by Vance Joy.
Oh, yeah. Good song.
Yeah, I think so too, which is why it's my song of the week. That's how this works. Yeah, I mean, not much to say about this one. Used to be pretty popular. Now that it's not running on the radio every day, I can actually listen to it. I think this one was also overplayed. It's one of those things where, like, even good songs can be overplayed to a point where you don't want to listen to them anymore. So often
it's like the same thing if you discover a new favorite song and listen for it, like, non-stop for like a week, and then you can't listen to it.
I don't usually do that. I'll usually just put it in like a small playlist or something.
Yeah.
Because of that problem, I guess, exactly. But yeah, this is, I think, from 2013, if I remember correctly. And like, there's a lot of songs from that time period. Like, I still don't like most of the music that came out around that time. But there are some good songs that came out around that time. And most of them were overplayed like hell. And so I thought I didn't like any music from the time until I discovered some of the music, like, after I hadn't heard it in like a decade. Close to. And now, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, yeah, actually, that was a good song. So, yeah.
Yep.
That was Songs of the Week. Right, that awkward moment between the end of Songs of the Week and me telling you to go fuck off. Likes for liking. Dislikes for disliking, subscribing for following, comments for commenting, joining the Discord server for the lols, and Sergey.
That's it.
That's it.